I'll win it all back tonight. I hoped. I left with less than bus fare. My name is Ryan. I'm 24, and I work in accounting. I used to have exact numbers for everything. Rent due on the 1st, car payment on the 15th, wedding savings growing by $200 a month. Tonight, I'm standing at an ATM at 1 a.m., pulling out money that isn't mine to lose that IT started 3 months ago. Just blackjack on lunch breaks. 20 here, 40 there. I had a system. I tracked patterns. I was different from those desperate people hunched over slots. Then I lost a week's pay in an hour. That's when the lying started, to my girlfriend, my boss, myself. One big win, and I'll quit. The machine asks if I'm sure about withdrawing my daily maximum. Behind me, the casino glows like a mouth. In my pocket, my phone buzzes with texts I won't read. This is the third time this week I've stood here, promising this is the last time. When you've already lost everything in your checking account, what makes you believe your savings will be different? I dealt cards at the Riverside Casino for 11 years, mostly graveyard shifts where the fluorescent lights made everyone look sick. That Tuesday night in March, I clocked in at 11, same as always. Tommy Chun was finishing his shift at my table, stretching his back as I approached. "Dead night," he said, sliding the chip tray my way. "Two players all shift. Hope you brought a book." I hadn't, but that was fine. The quiet nights were easier in some ways. Less money changing hands meant less damage done. Tommy gathered his tips, maybe $40 on a slow Tuesday, and headed for the employee exit. I settled onto my stool and squared the deck. The casino floor stretched out before me, mostly empty. Two old-timers worked the penny slots near the bar, their oxygen tanks glowing green in the machine lights. The cleaning crew pushed their carts between the tables, spraying and wiping down the felt. The smell of industrial disinfectant mixed with old cigarette smoke that had soaked into the walls years before the smoking began. At 11:47, a young guy approached my table. Mid-20s, wearing a wrinkled dress shirt like he'd come straight from the office. His tie was loosened, top button undone. He looked tired but alert, the way people do when they're running on coffee and adrenaline. "Table minimum?" he asked. $25. He nodded and reached for his wallet. Brown leather, worn at the corners. I watched him count out 10 20s, laying them on the felt one at a time. $200 exactly. The way he handled the bills, careful and deliberate, told me this wasn't throwaway money. Changing 200, I announced to the pit. Marlene glanced over from her podium, made a note on her clipboard that I counted out his chips, 8 greens, 4 reds. He stacked them neatly, edges aligned. Then he placed a green chip in the betting circle and looked up at me. Ready. I dealt the cards. He got a queen and a 6, 16. I showed a 7. He tapped the felt for a hit, got a 3, 19. He waved his hand to stand. I flipped my whole card, a 10, 17. He won. "Nice," he said quietly, like he was talking to himself. He left the chips out there, $50 now, and I dealt again. For the first half hour, he played perfect basic strategy. Split his 8s against my 6. Doubled down on 11 against my 5. Stood on all his 17ths, even when I showed small cards. He'd done his homework, probably read the same books everyone reads before they think they can beat the house. Between hands, he'd recount his chips. Not obviously, just quick touches with his fingertips, making sure the stacks hadn't changed. His breathing was controlled, measured. He'd take a deep breath before each bet, hold it while the cards came out, exhale when the hand resolved. I'd seen those tells 1,000 times. The careful breathing, the chip counting, the way he held his shoulders tight, like he was bracing for impact. They reminded me of my brother Danny, years ago, sitting at my kitchen table with a racing form and a calculator, explaining how he'd figured out a system for picking winners at Santa Anita. "The key is discipline," Danny had said, his hands shaking as he circled horses' names. "You stick to the system, you can't lose." But his hands gave him away. They shook the same way this kid's hands trembled slightly as he placed his bets. Not from nerves exactly, but from need. From wanting something so badly that your body vibrates with it. The kid won 3 hands, lost one, won another. He was up $75, his chip stack growing. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. He started to relax, shoulders dropping, breathing easier. This was the dangerous time. When the cards are friendly and the chips stack up and you start to believe you're different from everyone else who sits at these tables. I shuffled the deck and loaded it into the shoe. He pushed out another green chip, still playing the minimum, still disciplined. The cards wouldn't stay friendly forever. They never do. The kid's luck turned at 12:35 a.m. For losses in a row, each one seeming to surprise him more than the last. He had pocket 20s twice. Good hands that lost to my 20 once. His chip stack shrank back to its original size, then smaller. That's when I saw the first crack in his discipline. Instead of betting one green chip, he pushed out two. $50. Doubling up? I asked, following protocol. Just yeah, feeling good about this one. I dealt him a 12 against my face card, a king. The book says never hit a 12 against a dealer's 10, but he tapped the felt. You sure? I asked. We're not supposed to question plays, but sometimes it slips out. I'm sure. I pulled the next card. Another king. Bust, that he stared at the cards like they'd betrayed him personally. His phone buzzed on the rail beside his chips. He glanced at the screen, a text notification, and flipped it face down fast. The glimpse I caught showed multiple messages waiting. The next hand, he bet 75. 3 green chips. He got 11, a great hand, and doubled down like the book says. I gave him a 3. 14. I flipped a 10 to go with my 7. His good play, the textbook move, had cost him $150. Unbelievable, he muttered. His phone buzzed again. This time I saw part of the message preview. Where are you? In all caps. He powered the screen off completely. Now he was tilting. Every gambler has a different tell when they start chasing, and his was in his betting patterns. No more neat green chips. He'd grab randomly. 2 greens and 3 reds made 65. 4 greens and 1 red made 105. The amounts made no sense except that they were always more than the last bet. I kept dealing. The cards don't care if you're on tilt. They don't know you need to win back what you lost. They're just probability made physical, and the probability was grinding him down. Marlene caught my eye from the pit. She'd noticed the escalation too. We'd worked together for 6 years, developed our own language of looks and gestures. Her raised eyebrow asked if I needed a break. I gave a tiny head shake. Not yet. The kid split tens. A $100 bet turned into 200 when he broke apart a made hand. Every book, every website, every person who's ever played blackjack knows you never split tens. You've already got 20. But he wasn't playing blackjack anymore. He was playing something else, some private game against the universe where different rules applied. I dealt him 2 more cards. A 5 on one 10, a 6 on the other. Now he had 15 and 16 instead of 20. I flipped my cards, 18. Both hands lost. Fuck, he said, then caught himself. Sorry. No problem, I said, sweeping away his chips. $400 gone in 5 minutes. He reached for his wallet again. His hands shook worse now as he counted what was left. I'd seen him take out 200 at the start, but there must have been more in there. He found 3 more 20s, slid them across. Changing 60. Marlene made another note. She'd been at the Riverside since before I started, had seen everything there was to see. A few years back, she'd been the one to call security when a player locked himself in the bathroom after losing his son's tuition money. They found him trying to tie his belt to the coat hook. After that, Marlene watched the desperate ones more carefully. The kid, I should stop calling him that, he was probably 25, turned his 60 into nothing in 2 hands. His stack was down to maybe $50 in red chips. His face had gone pale under the casino lights, sweat beading on his forehead despite the aggressive air conditioning. His phone, face down on the rail, lit up with another notification. Even through the case, the screen's glow pulsed insistently. Someone was looking for him. Someone who didn't know where he was, what he was doing, what he was losing. He pushed his last $50 into the betting circle. All in, though we don't call it that in blackjack. I dealt the cards, already knowing how this would go. He got 17. I got 20. He stared at the empty space where his chips had been, his hands flat on the felt like he was trying to hold on to something that had already slipped away. His breathing had gone shallow and quick. That's when I saw it. The same look Danny had the night he called me from the Indian casino, broke and stranded, begging for gas money. Take your time, I said, which was as close as I could come to suggesting he walk away. But he was already reaching for his wallet again, pulling out the plastic that would make everything worse. The ATM card came out between trembling fingers, and I knew we were crossing a line. Cash was real. Cash had limits. Credit was fantasy money, tomorrow's problem, and tomorrow always felt far away at 1 a.m. under the fluorescent lights. He slid the card across the felt toward me, and I felt something twist in my stomach. I'd watched this scene play out too many times. But the rules were clear. We process the transactions. We deal the cards. We don't judge, don't advise, don't intervene. How much? I asked, my voice steady and professional. 500. Marlene's head turned. She'd heard the amount. Her hand moved to her watch, tapping the face, the signal for break time. But he was already signing the credit advance slip, and I had to finish what he'd started, the ATM receipt printed with a grinding sound that seemed too loud in the quiet casino. $500, cash advance, probably at 24% interest that would start accruing immediately. I counted out the chips, 20 greens, and slid them across. He stacked them with less precision now, his movements jerky and impatient. Up close, I could smell his cologne mixed with nervous sweat. His fingernails were bitten down to the quick. A thin white line on his ring finger suggested he usually wore a watch but had taken it off, or sold it. "I've got a system," he said, apropos of nothing. "Progressive betting after losses. The math works out." I'd heard every system there was. The martingale, the D'Alembert, the Fibonacci sequence applied to gambling. They all had one thing in common. They assumed infinite money and no table limits. The math only worked if you ignored reality. "Lots of systems out there," I said neutrally. Dealing the next hand, he got a pair of 4s against my 5. A good spot to split, which he did, putting out another 100. I dealt him a 7 on the first 4, then a 6 on the second. Double down opportunities on both. "The key is knowing when to press," he explained, pushing out 2 more bets. He was in for 300 on one hand now. His system demanding he chase the loss aggressively. I dealt the double down cards face down. He flipped the first, a 10, giving him 21. His face lit up. Then the second, another 10, also 21. "There it is," he breathed. "There's the turnaround." I flipped my whole card. A 6, giving me 11. The next card came off the shoe like fate itself. A 10. 21. Push on both hands. $300 frozen in time. Neither won nor lost. His face went through a series of expressions: disbelief, frustration, then a forced optimism. "Still alive," he said, leaving the chips out there. Between hands, memories of Danny kept surfacing. The way he'd explained his horse racing system with manic enthusiasm. The notebook full of calculations and track conditions. The Tuesday he'd shown up at my apartment at 3 a.m., eyes wild, saying he'd figured out how to beat the pick 6. "I just need 5,000, he'd said. "I've isolated the pattern. Look at these results." He'd spread papers across my kitchen table, printouts from racing websites, charts he'd drawn by hand. It all looked convincing if you wanted to believe it. If you needed to believe it. "Where's Mom's jewelry?" I'd asked, noticing his bare wrist where our grandfather's watch usually Saturday. "Temporary," he'd said. "I'll buy it all back with interest after this hits." But it didn't hit. It never hit. 2 months later, I found him going through my closet, looking for anything he could pawn. That's when I'd learned about the extent of it. Maxed credit cards, borrowed money from friends, advances from loan sharks who were starting to call. Now I watched this kid. I caught myself thinking of him as a kid again, chase his losses with the same fevered certainty. He was explaining his system in more detail. How you had to double after each loss, how the wins would compound, how it was mathematically inevitable if you just had enough bankroll. "The house edge is only 0.5% with perfect basic strategy," he said, like he was teaching me something. "That's almost even odds." "That's right," I agreed, dealing another hand. He lost. His remaining chips dwindled. 200, 150, 100. Each loss made him talk faster, explain more frantically why this was about to turn around. His phone lit up again. I could see it in my peripheral vision, pulsing with messages. "My girlfriend doesn't get it," he said suddenly. "Lauren. She thinks this is just throwing money away. But I track everything. Spreadsheets. I'm up overall, just hit a bad run tonight." Lauren. Now she had a name. I wondered if she knew where her boyfriend was right now, what he was doing with money that might be earmarked for rent or groceries or the life they were building together. He bet his last 100 on the next hand. Got a soft 18, an ace, and a 7. I showed a 9. The book says to stand, but he hit it. The ace made it flexible, he reasoned. Room to improve. I dealt him a 5. 13. He hit again. A 10. Bust. God damn it. He slumped in his chair. I had 18. "Tough break," I said, Collecting the chips, he sat there for a moment, staring at the empty betting circle. His phone buzzed again, insistent. This time he picked it up, read the messages. His face tightened. I need. He stopped, swallowed. Can I do another advance? 1,000 this time. I glanced at Marlene. She was already walking over, her approach casual but purposeful. This was the dance we did. The intervention that wasn't an intervention. The concern that couldn't be expressed directly. Marcus, she said, you're due for your break. I'm good for another 20-minute break, she said firmly. Union rules. I understood. She was giving him a natural pause, a chance to walk away without losing face. Sometimes it worked. People would go to the bathroom, splash water on their faces, check their phones, and remember they had lives outside these walls. But he was already sliding his ATM card across again. Just process this before you go. I looked at Marlene. She gave the slightest shrug. We couldn't refuse a legal transaction. That was the ugly truth of it. We could watch someone destroy themselves as long as they did it according to the rules. 1,000, I confirmed, running the card, while we waited for approval. He talked more about his system, about standard deviation, about how the next 1,000 would be the turning point. His words ran together, punctuated by glances at his phone. Lauren had stopped texting. Sometimes that was worse than the angry messages. Sometimes silence meant they'd given up. The receipt printed. The advance was approved. I counted out 40 green chips and watched him stack them with hands that shook like my brothers used to shake. Like the hands of everyone who'd sat in that chair believing this time would be different. Good luck, I said. Pushing the chips across, Marlene tapped her watch again. Break time. No argument. But I knew that when I came back in 20 minutes, he'd still be there. They always were. The chips would be gone. The ATM would have reached its limit. And he'd be staring at that empty circle, wondering how the math had failed him. Just like Danny. The night I found him at our mother's house at 4 a.m., kneeling in front of her jewelry box. Trying to remember which pieces were worth the most that I tried to take my break, but he wasn't having it. His hand gripped the edge of the table like an anchor. Just a few more hands, he said. I can't leave when I'm down this much. The $1,000 in chips sat in front of him, neat stacks of possibility. I recognized the logic. The gambler's physics where being down meant you had to keep playing, where the only way out was through. Sir, I need to, please. The word came out cracked. I've got this figured out. I just need to execute the system properly. Marlene had walked back to her podium, but her eyes stayed on us. She knew I'd cave. 20 years of dealing, and I still couldn't walk away when they begged. My weakness, Danny called it. My inability to let people fail on their own terms. That I sat back down and shuffled. The cards whispered against each other, a sound I heard in my dreams sometimes. He pushed out $200, 8 green chips in a desperate tower. This is everything, he said suddenly. Rent money, car payment, 3 months of saving for the ring. You don't have to tell me this, I said, but he kept talking. Lauren's been looking at venues. Small places, nothing fancy. Her mom offered to pay for the dress. He got 16 against my 10. We were going to book the Legion Hall next week. He hit the 16, busted with a king. Fuck. He pushed out another 200. Sorry. I had it all planned out. Win 3,000 tonight. Surprise her with the booking tomorrow. The next hand came fast. 20 for him, 21 for me. His chips disappeared into my tray with practiced efficiency. How? His voice had gone small. How do you get 21 so often? Random distribution, I said. Over time, it evens out. But not tonight. He counted his remaining chips, $600. Tonight, you're running hot, and I'm ice cold. His phone buzzed. This time he looked at it, and his face crumbled. Whatever Lauren had finally texted, it wasn't good. He turned the phone completely off and set it aside. You know what? He grabbed all his remaining chips. All in. 600. Let the universe decide. I wanted to stop him. Wanted to sweep the chips back and tell him about the meetings at St. Augustine's, about second chances, about my brother who'd climbed out of this same hole. But the cameras were watching. The rules were clear. I dealt the cards that he got 12. I showed an ace. Insurance? He shook his head. I checked for blackjack. Didn't have it. His shoulders relaxed slightly. Still alive, he stared at his 12 against my ace. The worst position in blackjack. Damned if you hit, damned if you don't. $600 hanging on whatever came next. The book says hit, he muttered. But the book hasn't been working tonight. I waited. My job was patience. Watching people wrestle with probability, with hope, with the voice in their head that whispered maybe this time. He tapped the felt for a card. A 9. 21. Yes. His whole body unclenched. There it is. There's the math working out. I flipped my whole card. A 9, giving me 20. He'd won. 600 became 1200, just like that. He let out a laugh that sounded like crying. I knew it, he said. The variance was too extreme. It had to correct. But instead of pulling chips back, safeguarding the win, he left them all out there. $1,200 in the betting circle. I looked at Marlene. She was already on the phone, probably calling the floor manager. Bets this size needed approval. One hand, he explained, though I hadn't asked. Either I go home even or I go home broke. Clean outcome either way. That's when I dealt myself blackjack. Ace and king, pretty as a picture. Automatic winner. No decisions, no drama. Just the cold reality of a 3:2 payout he wouldn't get that he didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stared at my cards like they were a diagnosis. The silence stretched until I had to break it. I'm sorry, I said, which we weren't supposed to say. No. He laughed, but it was hollow. No, this is perfect. This is exactly what I needed to see. I collected his chips, 48 green pieces that had been rent and car payments and wedding dreams. He watched them disappear into my tray, then looked at his empty hands. I had a whole speech planned, he said, for when I won. Was going to call Lauren from the parking lot. Tell her I'd booked the venue as a surprise. His wallet came out one more time. He opened it, showed me the emptiness inside. A driver's license, a maxed credit card, a photo of a young Asian woman laughing at something off camera. That's her, he said. Lauren, 3 years next month. Was going to propose at the venue. Make it a double surprise. He stood up slowly, like his bones hurt. Pulled his wrinkled dress shirt straighter. His phone stayed off on the rail. He'd forgotten it. I pushed it toward him. Don't want to leave this. Right. He picked it up, but didn't turn it on. Thanks. He walked away, each step measured and careful, like a man navigating ice. At the ATM near the cashier's cage, he stopped. I watched him try his card one more time. Denied. He tried again. Denied. Then he headed for the exit, shoulders forward against some invisible wind that he stopped at the door. Just stood there, hand on the push bar, not moving. For a moment, I thought he might turn around, come back to the table, beg for a marker or credit or some impossible reversal of time. Instead, he looked back at me. Our eyes met across the casino floor. He raised his hand in what might have been a wave or a salute or a goodbye. Then he pushed through the door into the night. Take your break, Marlene said, appearing at my shoulder. For real this time. I secured my table and headed for the employee break room. My legs felt heavy, like I'd been standing for days instead of hours. In the mirror above the coffee machine, my face looked gray under the harsh light. 20 minutes. That's what union rules guaranteed. 20 minutes to shake off whatever had just happened and return to the table fresh. Ready to deal to whoever sat down next. That I made coffee I didn't want and sat at the scarred break table. Someone had left a newspaper, the Las Vegas Sun, 2 days old. The headline was about water shortages. Underneath, smaller text, local man dies in apparent suicide at Lake Mead. I didn't read the details. Didn't need to. My hands were steady as I sipped the bitter coffee. Dealer's hands. Trained to shuffle and cut and deal without trembling, no matter what story was unfolding on the other side of the felt. But inside, something was shaking that I thought about calling Danny. He'd understand. He'd been on the other side of tables like mine, watching dealers like me take everything he had. But it was 2:30 a.m. Even insomniacs needed boundaries. Rough night. Carla from the slot section sat down across from me. She'd been at Riverside longer than anyone. Started when the place still had coin-operated machines. Had a kid lose his wedding savings. They always tell you what it is, she said. Like that makes it matter more. Had a lady last week, said it was her mother's funeral money. Still played it all. How do you stand it? She shrugged. Bills don't pay themselves. And someone's going to deal the cards. Might as well be someone who at least notices when they're drowning. But noticing wasn't helping. Noticing just meant you watched the water close over their heads with your eyes wide open. My break ended. I walked back through the casino, past the ATM where he'd tried one last time, past the empty chair where he'd sat. Marlene had sent a floater to cover my table. Janet, who never remembered players' faces or stories. A blessing, maybe. All yours, she said, sliding off the stool that I took my position. The table was empty now, just me and the cards, and the green felt stretching out like a calm sea. But I knew it wouldn't stay empty. They never did. Someone would sit down soon. Someone with money they couldn't afford to lose and hope they couldn't afford to give up. That I drove home at 4 a.m. through empty streets. The radio played classic rock, the Eagles singing about a hotel you could never leave. I turned it off. Silence was better than metaphors. My apartment complex was dark except for the security lights. Mrs. Rodriguez's TV flickered through her curtains. Another insomniac, or maybe she'd fallen asleep watching. I climbed the stairs to my second-floor unit, each step echoing in the quiet. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it. Clean counters, bills in a neat stack, a life organized to require minimal thought. Dealer's discipline extended to home. No surprises, no chaos, no decisions that mattered. That I sat on my couch and pulled out my phone. Danny's number was at the top of recent calls. We talked more now than when he was using. Recovery had given him back to me, but sometimes I missed the distance. Easier to judge from far away. He answered on the second ring. Bad night. How'd you know? You only call this late when someone reminds you of me. I told him about the kid, the wedding savings, the system that didn't work, the way he'd thanked me at the end. Danny listened without interrupting, which was another gift of recovery. Active listening, they called it. Being present for someone else's pain. Was that me? He asked when I finished. Is that how I looked? Sometimes, yeah. Shit. A long pause. I'm sorry you had to see that. Then and now. Do you remember the night with Mom's jewelry? Every detail. Sometimes I inventory it when I can't sleep. The turquoise bracelet from Dad. Her mother's pearl necklace. The anniversary ring she never wore after the divorce. I'd found him on his knees in front of her jewelry box, not stealing exactly, just touching each piece like a rosary. He'd already sold what he could. These were the pieces that meant too much, that carried more weight than their gold content. I was going to take them, he said. Had the pawn shop picked out and everything. But you walked in, and the look on your face, I wasn't judging. No, you were disappointed. That's worse. We sat with that for a moment, connected by phone lines and shared history. The kid tonight, Danny said. He's got people who love him. Girlfriend named Lauren. They were planning a wedding. Then maybe he's got a chance. I didn't hit bottom until I'd burned every bridge twice. Love can be a parachute if you pull the cord in time. After we hung up, I made a bowl of cereal and sat at my kitchen table. Outside, the sky was starting to lighten. Another day beginning for normal people, ending for those of us who worked the night side of the world. My hands were steady as I ate. Always steady. That was the gift and the curse. I could deal cards while lives fell apart, could watch the water rise without drowning myself. But what kind of gift was that? What kind of person did it make me? Danny called back an hour later. I couldn't sleep. Keep thinking about your player. He wasn't my player. You know what I mean. The kid. Ryan? Did you get his name? No. Just that his girlfriend's Lauren. He's got a system. Danny laughed, but it was sad. I had so many systems. Remember my Fibonacci sequence phase? Thought I'd cracked the code because some Italian mathematician figured out how rabbits breed. I remembered. He'd filled notebooks with numbers, each bit determined by adding the previous two together. It worked until it didn't, like every system ever invented. You want to know the worst part? Danny said, even now, 3 years clean, I still think about systems. Still see patterns in random numbers. My brain's permanently rewired to look for edges that don't exist. Is that why you're awake at 5 a.m.? Partially. Also because Jerry, my sponsor, his son just got caught stealing from his job. Casino money. Kid's 22. Thought he could win back what he owed before anyone noticed. The cycle continuing. Generation after generation sitting down at tables like mine, convinced they were different, special, blessed by math or God or desperate need. What happened? I asked. Arrested yesterday. Jerry's trying to get him into treatment instead of jail. Asked me to talk to him, share my story. Will you? Already did. Went to county lockup, sat across from this scared kid who reminded me of myself at that age. Told him about the bridge. I'd never heard the full bridge story. Just pieces. Danny at his lowest, standing on the Riverside Bridge at 3 a.m., looking down at Blackwater. What stopped him wasn't fear or hope or sudden clarity. It was a stranger walking a dog who asked for directions to a street that didn't exist. They talked for 20 minutes about nothing, and by the end, the moment had passed. The kid, Jerry's son, he listened. But I could see him calculating, how to minimize damage, how to get back to even. He's not ready to stop, just ready to be more careful. Maybe careful's a start. Maybe. Danny sighed. I'm going to his arraignment tomorrow. Today, I guess. Show up for Jerry if nothing else. After we hung up again, I tried to sleep. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the kid from tonight staring at his empty betting circle. Saw him trying his ATM card one more time. Saw him walking into the night with nothing but the weight of what he'd lost. Around 7 a.m., I gave up and turned on the news. Weather report, traffic updates, a segment on water conservation. Then, briefly, a missing person report. Silver Honda Civic found abandoned at Riverside Park boat launch. 24-year-old man, family requesting privacy. They didn't show a photo. Didn't need to. I knew who it was before they said the name. Ryan Morrison. I sat up, suddenly awake. The timeline fit. Tuesday night at my table, Wednesday missing, Thursday morning car found. The park was 5 miles from the casino, right where the river widened and deepened. The news moved on to other stories, but I stayed frozen on my couch, seeing his face again. That moment at the door when he looked back and raised his hand. A goodbye. I'd known it even then, but I'd let him walk out anyway. I went back to work Wednesday night, because what else was there to do? The casino looked exactly the same. Same lights, same sounds, same desperate energy humming through the air. As if Ryan Morrison had never existed, never sat at my table, never lost everything in 2 hours. Mrs. Chin took his seat. She'd been a regular for 3 years, always played conservative, always had her club card ready. But tonight something was different. Her wedding ring was gone, leaving a pale indent on her finger. Evening, Marcus, she said, buying in for her usual 200. Quiet night. So far. I dealt her cards while noticing other changes. Her roots were showing gray. She'd always kept up with her hair coloring before. The designer purse had been replaced with something generic. Small signs of a life contracting. She played mechanically, minimum bets, no conversation. Usually she told me about her grandchildren, her garden, the cooking classes she took at the community center. Tonight she just played cards and checked her watch between hands. Everything okay, Mrs. Chun? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Fine. Just fine. Around 2 a.m., Marlene moved me to the high-limit room. Different crowd there, business types with expense accounts, doctors and lawyers who could afford their losses. Cleaner desperation, dressed in better clothes. I dealt to a software executive who kept taking calls between hands, lying to someone about where he was. A surgeon who hadn't slept in 2 days and kept nodding off mid-bet. A real estate agent celebrating a big sale by losing her commission. Same stories, different tax brackets. During my break, I checked my phone. No messages. I thought about calling Danny but didn't. What would I say? That I was seeing Ryan Morrison in every player? That I kept looking toward the entrance, expecting him to walk back in? The news played on the break room TV. Weather, sports, traffic. Nothing about abandoned cars or missing persons. Ryan had already slipped through the cracks, become another statistic nobody talked about. You okay? Janet asked, refilling her coffee. You look tired. Just thinking. That's your problem. Think too much in this job, you'll go crazy. Just deal the cards. But I couldn't stop thinking. About Ryan's system that didn't work. About Mrs. Chin's missing wedding ring. About all the last bets I'd dealt over 11 years. All the empty circles I'd swept clean. When I got back to my table, a new player was waiting. Young guy, nervous energy, carefully counting his buy-in. First time, I asked. Yeah, birthday money. Figure I'll try my luck. I wanted to tell him to run. Take his birthday money and buy something that would last. Create a memory that didn't involve losing. But I just smiled and dealt the cards. Complicit in whatever story was about to unfold, he played 3 hands, lost them all, and left. Smart kid. The ones who left quick sometimes had a chance. It was the ones who stayed, who believed in systems and luck and making it all back, who ended up like Ryan. Thursday morning, the news had more details. Ryan Morrison, 24, missing since Tuesday night. His girlfriend Lauren had reported him missing when he didn't come home or show up for work Wednesday. The silver Civic at the boat launch, abandoned. No signs of struggle. Personal effects left in the vehicle. They showed his picture this time. DMV photo, That nervous half-smile everyone makes when they're trying to look normal for the camera. He looked younger than I remembered. Looked like somebody's son, somebody's boyfriend, somebody's future that would never arrive. That I turned off the TV and sat in my kitchen, staring at nothing. My phone rang. Danny, you see the news? Yeah. That him? Your player from Tuesday? I think so. Ryan Morrison. Jesus. A pause. How you holding up? I didn't know how to answer. I'd dealt cards while a man fell apart. Followed the rules, stayed professional, let him walk out with nothing. Now he was probably at the bottom of the river, and I was sitting in my kitchen wondering what to have for breakfast. Marcus, I'm here. You want to come by the store? I could use help with inventory. Danny's hardware store. His symbol of recovery, bought with a small business loan after 2 years clean. A place where people built things instead of destroying them. Where hammers and nails had definite purposes and predictable outcomes. Maybe later. Okay, but Marcus? This isn't on you. You know that, right? Did I? I'd taken his money, dealt the cards that beat him, watched him spiral, and did nothing but follow casino protocol. How was that not on me? After Danny hung up, I called the casino. Told them I needed a personal day. The manager sounded annoyed but approved it. Dealers were replaceable. We called in, someone else covered. The games went on. I drove to St. Augustine's, where the Thursday night GA meetings happened. It was only 10 a.m., the parking lot empty except for a maintenance van. But I sat there anyway, watching the church doors, imagining all the people who'd walked through them seeking help. Had Ryan known about this place? About the meetings where people like Danny found their way back? Or had he driven past like it was just another building, another chance he didn't know existed? My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Is this Marcus? From Riverside Casino. I stared at the message, heart suddenly racing. Typed back. Who is this? Lauren Chun, Ryan's girlfriend. The police showed me security footage from Tuesday night. You were his dealer. Can we talk? I sat in that church parking lot, looking at her message, feeling the weight of what she was asking. She wanted answers. Wanted to understand how her boyfriend went from planning their future to abandoning his car by the river. What could I tell her? That he'd had a system? That he'd lost with dignity until the very end? That I'd watched it happen and done nothing because the rules said I couldn't? Yes, I typed back. When and where? We agreed to meet that afternoon at a coffee shop downtown. Neutral ground. Public space. A conversation I didn't want to have but couldn't avoid, because maybe that's what we owed them, the ones who didn't make it. Not just to deal their cards and take their money, but to witness their endings. To carry their stories. To remember they were more than empty betting circles. That I started my car and drove home, thinking about what I'd tell Lauren Chun. How do you explain to someone that you watched the person they love disappear piece by piece? That you saw the exact moment hope turned to despair, and all you did was shuffle the deck for the next hand? The coffee shop was one of those chains trying to feel local, exposed brick, mismatched furniture, baristas who remembered your name. I arrived early and took a corner table where I could see the door. Ordered black coffee I didn't want, just to have something to do with my hands. Lauren Chun walked in at exactly 2 p.m. I recognized her from the photo in Ryan's wallet, though that laughing girl was gone. This version had swollen eyes, unwashed hair pulled back, wearing what looked like yesterday's clothes. She spotted me immediately. Must have studied the security footage enough to know my face. Marcus. I stood awkward. Yeah, I'm sorry for. Just tell me what happened. She sat down hard. The police said he lost money. How much? $1,700. Her face crumpled. That was. We were saving for. She stopped, composed herself. Tell me everything. Please. So I did. Started with him approaching my table at 11:47. Ended with him walking out around 2 a.m. I told her about the careful way he'd counted his initial buy-in. The system he believed in. The way his hands shook when he signed for the cash advances. He mentioned you, I said. Talked about the wedding you were planning. We put the deposit down 2 weeks ago. Non-refundable. She laughed, but it came out broken. He said he had a surprise for me. Kept smiling all through dinner Monday night. Said Tuesday was going to change everything. He wanted to win enough to pay for the whole thing. Said he was going to call you from the parking lot when he won. When he won. She stared at her untouched latte. He always thought he was about to win. Started small, you know? 20 here, 50 there. Office basketball pools. Then he discovered online poker. Then the casino. A familiar progression. Gateway games leading to real money, leading to real problems. I'd seen it hundreds of times, but never from this side. Sitting across from the aftermath, the human wreckage left behind. I should have known, she continued. The ATM receipts in his car. The way he'd disappear for hours. How he always seemed to have less money than he should. But he was so good at explaining it away. It's not your fault, isn't it? I saw the signs and ignored them. Wanted to believe in the version of him I fell in love with. She finally looked at me directly. Did he seem? Did you think he was planning? I don't know. He seemed defeated when he left, but not. I searched for the right words. People leave my table broke all the time. Most of them just go home. But not Ryan. No, not Ryan. We sat in silence. Around us, normal people led normal lives. Students with laptops, friends catching up, a woman reading a paperback in the afternoon sun. None of them carrying the weight of someone's last night. The police found his car at 6 a.m. Wednesday, Lauren said. His wallet was on the passenger seat. Empty except for his ID and that picture of me. Phone was dead. Keys in the ignition. She pulled out her own phone, showed me their last text exchange. Her messages got increasingly frantic as Tuesday night wore on. Where are you? Ryan, please answer. I'm worried. Whatever happened, we can fix it. Just come home. His last response was at 11:15 p.m., before he'd even reached my table, having drinks with Tom from work. Be home late. He lied so easily, she said. I called Tom Wednesday morning. They hadn't spoken in weeks. The manager brought someone a sandwich at the next table. Normal lunch, normal day. I wondered how many people in this coffee shop were hiding addictions, lying to loved ones, one bad night from their own boat launch. I need to know something, Lauren said. Could you have stopped him? If you'd refused to deal, or cut him off? Or, the question I'd been asking myself for 2 days. Casino policy doesn't allow that. As long as he had money and wasn't belligerent, I had to deal. But you wanted to stop. Yes. Did he know that? Could he tell? I thought about the moment I'd said, take your time, when his chips were gone. The look Marlene and I had exchanged. The way I'd pushed his phone toward him so he wouldn't forget it. Maybe. I hope so. She nodded, seemed to find some small comfort in that. The hardest part is not knowing why Tuesday. What made that night different? We'd had a good weekend. Went to dim sum with my parents. Talked about honeymoon destinations. Sometimes there is no why. Just a cascade of small decisions that lead somewhere irreversible. Is that what happened to your brother? I looked at her, surprised. She managed a weak smile. You mentioned him to the police. When they interviewed you yesterday, you said Ryan reminded you of your brother. The police interview. For hours in a windowless room, Detective Martinez asking the same questions different ways. When did he arrive? How much did he lose? Did he seem suicidal? They'd taken notes, reviewed the security footage, built their report. Another gambling tragedy. Another young man who'd lost more than money. My brother's in recovery now, I said. 3 years clean. Runs a hardware store. So it's possible? People can come back from this. Some do. If they get help in time. If they want to change. If they have people who don't give up on them. I wouldn't have given up. Her voice broke. I would have done anything. Intervention, therapy, moved cities if we had to. Why didn't he let me try? Because shame is heavier than water. Because it's easier to disappear than disappoint someone you love. Because in that moment, at 2 a.m. with empty pockets and empty promises, the river might have seemed like mercy, but I didn't say any of that. Just reached across the table and touched her hand briefly. He loved you. That was clear in how he talked about you. Saturday morning, the news confirmed what we already knew. Body recovered from the river, identified as Ryan Morrison. No foul play suspected. The reporter stood at the boat launch, wind whipping her hair, reciting statistics about gambling-related suicides in Nevada that I sat in my kitchen, coffee cold in my hands, watching them reduce Ryan to numbers. One of 800 gambling-related suicides per year. One of 30% of problem gamblers who attempt. One more casualty of an industry built on mathematical certainty that the house always wins. My phone rang. Danny, you okay? No. Want to come by the store? I've got coffee on. I drove to Danny's hardware store on autopilot. Saturday morning meant customers, contractors getting supplies, homeowners starting weekend projects, normal people building and fixing things. Danny was at the register, ringing up a load of 2x4s. He looked good, clear-eyed, steady hands. The Danny I'd grown up with before the gambling took hold. He nodded toward the back office that I waited there among invoices and inventory sheets, evidence of a legitimate business built one day at a time. Photos on his desk. Our mother, his sponsor Jerry, the two of us at his one-year recovery celebration. Sorry about that, he said, closing the door. Busy morning. How you holding up? I quit. The word surprised me. I hadn't planned them, hadn't even conscious thought them. But sitting there in Danny's office, surrounded by proof that people could change, could build instead of destroy, I knew they were true. When? Now? Today? I can't go back. Danny studied me. What about your lease? Your bills? I'll figure it out. You could work here. I need help, especially Saturdays. Can't pay much, but you'd hire me? After everything. Everything meaning. The night I'd refused to lend him money, the interventions I'd skipped, the years I'd worked at the place that had nearly killed him. Marcus, you saved my life. Maybe not directly, but you never gave up on me. Even when I stole from you. You stole from me. He smiled sadly. 500 from your emergency fund. That night you found me at Mom's. I'd already taken it. Was going back for more when you showed up. I'd wondered about that missing money. Blamed the bank, my own bad memory, anything but my brother. I paid it back, he continued. Slipped it into your account after I got clean. But the point is, you could have pressed charges. Could have written me off. Instead, you kept answering my calls. That's just what brothers do. No, that's what love does. And right now, you need some of that love directed at yourself. Outside his office, customers browsed aisles of possibility. Tools for building, supplies for repairing, everything needed to make something from nothing. The opposite of a casino, where something always became nothing, where the math ensured it. Okay, I said. When do I start? Saturday night shift at Riverside. My last one, though I hadn't told them yet. I dealt cards like a machine. Perfect form, no wasted motion, 11 years of muscle memory doing the work while my mind was elsewhere that a young man sat down at my table around midnight. Clean cut, nervous energy, checking his phone between hands. Ryan's ghost in another body. How's it going? I asked, my standard greeting. Good, good. Just killing time. He bought in for 300. Girlfriends at a bachelorette party. Figured I'd try my luck. I dealt him a 15 against my 10. He studied his cards like they held secrets. What do you think? He asked that we weren't supposed to give advice. House rules. But I was already breaking rules in my head. Already gone from this place. The book says hit. I told him. Statistics favor taking a card. He hit. Drew a 5. 20. Won the hand. Thanks, he said, smiling. You've been dealing long? 11 years. Must have seen everything. Pretty much. He played a few more hands. Won some, lost some. Kept it light, conversational. Then his phone rang, saved as future wife on the screen. He answered immediately. Hey, babe. Yeah, just hanging out. How's the party? He listened, laughed. Okay, I'll head home soon. Love you too. After he hung up, he colored up his chips. Was down $50. Calling it a night. I asked. Yeah. Promised I'd be home when she got back. He pocketed his remaining chips. Thanks for the advice earlier. I watched him leave, walking steady, phone in hand, heading home to someone who'd called to check on him. Someone whose name in his phone was a promise, not a memory. Marlene appeared at my shoulder. You all right? You seem different tonight. I'm fine. But she kept watching me, the way she'd watched Ryan 4 nights ago. Saw something I thought I'd hidden. If you need to talk, I'm quitting. The words hung between us. She didn't seem surprised. When? Now? Tonight. I'm done after this shift. Marcus, I can't do this anymore. Can't watch people drown for a living. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I get it. I've thought about it myself. Every time security has to cut someone down in the parking garage, every time someone's family comes looking for them, why do you stay? 20 years in, where else would I go? But you. You're young enough to do something else. Smart enough too. A new player approached the table. Marlene squeezed my shoulder and returned to her podium. I dealt cards for 4 more hours, each hand a goodbye to this life. When 7 a.m. finally came, I cashed out my tray for the last time. The manager wasn't in yet. I left my resignation on his desk, 2 sentences, effective immediately. Then I turned in my dealer's license, my name tag, my parking pass. 11 years of nights condensed into a manila envelope. Marlene caught me at the employee exit, handed me a piece of paper with her number. In case you ever want to talk. Or grab coffee. In the real world. I hugged her, probably against some policy, but what did it matter now? She smelled like casino smoke and vanilla perfume, like all those nights we'd shared the floor. Take care of yourself, she said. I walked out into the morning sun, squinting against brightness I'd rarely seen from this angle. My car was one of the last in the employee lot. I sat there for a moment, looking back at the Riverside Casino, just a building. Concrete and neon and false promises. But also the place where Ryan Morrison played his last hands. Where Mrs. Chun pawned her wedding ring one bet at a time. Where my brother Danny had learned the weight of loss. Monday morning, I showed up at Danny's hardware store with no idea how to sell anything. He handed me an apron and started with basics. Inventory system, register operation, how to cut keys. His patience reminded me of our father teaching us to ride bikes. Steady voice, gentle corrections, faith we'd figure it out. Most important thing, Danny said, is listening. People come in with problems. We help them find solutions. My first customer was an elderly man needing washers for a leaky faucet. I helped him find the right size, explained how to install them. When he left, he thanked me like I'd done something important. Maybe I had. The work was different from dealing. Straightforward cause and effect. Broken things could be fixed. The right tool for the right job. No hidden odds, no house edge, just honest transactions. Around lunch, Danny found me reorganizing the fastener aisle. A dealer's compulsion for order. Manager from Riverside called, he said. Wanted to know if I knew where you were. Said you left without giving notice. What did you tell him? That you were starting a new life. He didn't like that answer. I left 11 years worth of notice. They just weren't paying attention. A woman came in looking for mouse traps. Humane ones, she specified. Didn't want to kill them, just relocate them. We found her a catch-and-release model, and she left happy. Small mercies in the hardware business. You're good at this, Danny observed. Natural helper. I helped plenty of people at the casino. Helped them lose everything. That's the guilt talking. You were doing a job. Some jobs shouldn't exist. He didn't argue. His own recovery had taught him the danger of defending the indefensible. Instead, he showed me how to mix paint, how to thread pipe, how to build rather than tear down. The day passed quickly. Real sunlight through real windows. Customers who left with tools to fix their problems instead of empty pockets. My hands, so used to dealing cards, learned new rhythms to AT closing time. Danny counted the register while I swept. Ordinary end to an ordinary day, and yet it felt like a miracle. No one had lost their rent money. No one had lied to their spouse about where they were. No one had looked at me with that specific desperation of the all-in bet. Same time tomorrow? Danny asked. Yeah. I drove home past the riverside, its neon already glowing against the darkening sky. Somewhere inside, dealers were starting their shifts, taking their positions, squaring their decks, ready to process hopes into heartbreak with mathematical precision. My phone buzzed. Text from Lauren Chun. Thank you for meeting with me. It helped to know he wasn't alone at the end, even if he thought he was. I sat with that for a while. The strange intimacy of being someone's last dealer, of watching them play their final hands, place their final bets, walk away for the final time. Tomorrow I'd sell hammers and help fix faucets. But tonight, I carried Ryan Morrison's story and Mrs. Chin's and all the others who'd sat at my table believing this time would be different. Thursday evening, Danny invited me to his GA meeting. Just to listen, he said. Might help with what you're carrying. St. Augustine's basement smelled like coffee and hope. Folding chairs in a circle, about 20 people, all ages and backgrounds. Danny introduced me simply as his brother, and that was enough. The stories came one at a time. A teacher who'd lost her pension at blackjack. A contractor who'd bet away his business on sports. A grandmother who'd spent her grandkids' college funds on slots. Each tale different in details, identical in trajectory. Hi, I'm Patricia, and I'm a compulsive gambler. Hi, Patricia. Tuesday was my daughter's birthday. First one I've been present for in 5 years. Actually present, not checking scores on my phone or thinking about getting to the casino. She turned 16. Applause for small victories, for showing up, for staying clean another day. Then I saw her. Lauren Chun, sitting across the circle, clutching a tissue. She noticed me at the same moment, gave a small nod. When it was her turn, she passed. Just listening tonight, she said, and the group moved on without pressure. That was the gift, space to hurt without having to perform your pain. After the meeting, people lingered over coffee and store-bought cookies. Danny worked the room like a host, checking on newcomers, celebrating milestones. 3 years clean had given him this: a community, a purpose, a way to transform his worst moments into someone else's lifeline. Lauren approached me by the coffee pot. "I didn't expect to see you here. My brother invited me. I didn't know you'd. Someone suggested Al-Anon for families and friends. But I wanted to understand Ryan's side first." She gestured around the room. "All these people, they're who Ryan could have been. If he'd made it here instead of, yeah." We stood awkwardly, bound by a tragedy neither asked for. "I'm planning a service," she said. "Saturday. Nothing big, just family and close friends. Would you?" I know it's weird to ask, but you were the last person who really saw him. Before the river. Would you come? The last person who saw him. Not Tom from work, who he'd claimed to be drinking with. Not Lauren, who'd trusted his lie. But me, a stranger who'd taken his money and watched him leave with nothing. "I'll be there." She wrote down the details on a coffee-stained napkin. A funeral home in Henderson, 2 p.m., casual dress. Celebrating Ryan's life, not how it ended. Danny appeared at my elbow as Lauren left. "You okay?" She invited me to his service. "You going?" "Have to, don't I? Some part of this needs witnessing. The part where you couldn't save him? Or the part where you're trying to save yourself?" Leave it to a recovering addict to cut straight to the truth. I watched the GA members cleaning up, stacking chairs, washing cups, preparing to return to their lives outside this circle of understanding. "Both," I admitted. "Both." Saturday. Ryan Morrison's memorial service. I wore my only suit, the one I'd bought for Danny's one-year recovery celebration. Full circle in polyester and regret. The funeral home was tasteful in that generic way. Muted colors, soft lighting, ambient music that came from nowhere. About 30 people gathered in the small chapel. I recognized Lauren's parents from photos Ryan had shown that night. His parents sat in the front row, destroyed that I took a seat in the back, feeling like an intruder. What would I say if someone asked how I knew Ryan? That I'd dealt him the cards that broke him? Lauren spoke first. Talked about meeting Ryan in college, their first date at a terrible Chinese restaurant, how he'd made her laugh until she cried. The Ryan she described was generous, ambitious, full of plans. Nothing like the desperate man at my table, except for the nervous energy, the need to win. His college roommate went next. Stories about late-night study sessions, intramural basketball, the time Ryan organized a surprise party for a homesick friend. Everyone laughed at the right moments, cried at others, celebrating a life that had been more than its ending. Then his mother stood, barely 5 feet tall, holding index cards that shook in her hands. "Ryan was my miracle baby," she began. 3 miscarriages before him. The doctors said. She stopped, collected herself. He knew he was wanted. Fought for. Maybe that's why he always fought so hard for everything. She talked about his childhood, honor roll, baseball team, the job he'd taken at 14 to buy his own computer. How proud they'd been at his college graduation, his first real job, when he'd introduced them to Lauren. "I don't understand what happened," she said, abandoning the cards. "My bright boy. My fighter. How did we lose him to this?" Her husband helped her sit. The minister took over, offered generic comfort about valleys and shadows and eternal rest. I stopped listening, focused instead on a photo display near the entrance. Ryan through the years, baby pictures, prom photos, college graduation. In every image, that same nervous smile, like he was perpetually unsure if he deserved to be happy. After the service, people gathered in an adjoining room. Sandwich platters, coffee, the awkward mingling of shared grief. I was heading for the exit when someone touched my arm. Ryan's mother. Up close, I could see her son in the shape of her eyes, the set of her jaw. "You're Marcus," she said. Not a question. "Lauren told me. You were there that night. I'm so sorry for your loss." Did he say anything? At the end? Anything that might help me understand? I thought about lying, inventing last words that would comfort her. But she deserved truth, even if it hurt. He talked about Lauren, about wanting to surprise her. He was trying to win back what he'd lost so he could give her everything. She nodded, tears running freely. He always wanted to be enough. We told him he was, just as himself, but he never believed it. Her husband appeared, gently guided her away. I stood there holding a paper plate I didn't remember taking, watching Ryan's community try to make sense of senselessness. Lauren found me by the door. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me." Mom's starting a scholarship, she said, in Ryan's name, for students struggling with addiction. She needs to do something with all this pain. Building something from nothing. The hardware store approach to grief. That's beautiful. Will you? She hesitated. If you ever deal to someone like Ryan again, will you remember him? Maybe find a way to help. I thought about telling her I'd quit dealing, that I'd walked away from the table, but that felt like asking for absolution I didn't deserve. I'll remember him, I promised. Which was true, even if incomplete. That I left the funeral home and drove to Danny's store. He was waiting in the parking lot, somehow knowing I'd need to not be alone. How was it? Awful. Necessary. I don't know. Yeah, that's about right. We sat on the tailgate of his truck, watching normal Saturday traffic pass by. People living their lives, running errands, unaware that somewhere a mother was learning to breathe around the hole where her son used to be. Does it get easier? I asked. Carrying other people's pain? No, but you get stronger. And eventually, you find ways to use it, to help the next person heading for the cliff. What if you can't? What if they jump anyway? Then you grieve. You rage. You remember. And you keep showing up for the ones who might still choose differently. A customer pulled into the lot, looking for weekend project supplies. Danny hopped down to help them, and I followed. Back to work. Back to building. Back to the slow process of constructing a life that didn't profit from desperation. But I carried Ryan Morrison with me now. Him and all the others. Their stories woven into mine, inseparable. The dealer's burden, not the cards we dealt, but the lives we touched and failed to save. That I in the store. Helping a young couple pick out paint for their first house, I made a quiet promise to Ryan's memory, to Lauren's question, to my own conscience that I would find a way to help. Not from behind a blackjack table, but somewhere else, somehow else. A dealer's penance, paid one small act at a time. The couple chose a warm blue for their bedroom. For calm, the woman said. Peaceful sleep. I mixed their paint carefully, making sure the color was exactly right. Such a small thing, but still. A young couple building a life together, choosing colors for their walls instead of betting their future on the turn of a card. It was something. It was a start point. 3 months later, I stood in St. Augustine's basement, setting up chairs for the Thursday night meeting. My hands, once so quick with cards, now familiar with the rhythm of service, making coffee, arranging cookies, creating space for people to heal. Danny had started bringing me regularly. First just to listen, then to help with setup, finally to share my own story. Not as a gambler, but as someone who'd profited from gambling, who'd dealt the cards that broke people, who carried that weight and was learning to transform it. My name is Marcus. I'd said that first time, voice shaking. And I was a casino dealer for 11 years. The group had listened without judgment as I talked about Ryan, about Mrs. Chun, about watching people drown in slow motion while following company policy, about the morning I walked away and why. I can't undo the damage I was part of, I concluded. But I can witness. I can remember. I can make sure their stories aren't forgotten. Now, 3 months clean of dealing, I had my own recovery to track. Not from gambling, but from enabling it. From the comfortable numbness of just doing my job while lives collapsed across the felt. People started arriving for the meeting. Patricia, celebrating 6 months clean. Jerry and his son, who'd taken a plea deal for treatment instead of jail. New faces every week, each carrying their own weight of loss and hope. Then I saw her. Mrs. Chun, hesitating at the door. Thinner than before, wearing the same careful dignity she brought to my blackjack table. Our eyes met, and I saw a recognition dawn. Marcus. Hi, Mrs. Chun. I'm glad you're here. She came in slowly, chose a seat near the door, ready to bolt. I brought her coffee, the way she liked it from the casino. 2 sugars, no cream. I didn't know you. She started. I don't gamble, but I needed to be here anyway. To understand. She nodded, clutched the coffee cup. I lost everything. House, retirement, my late husband's life insurance. Thought I was honoring his memory by, I don't know, refusing to be sad, staying busy. The casino was always open, always bright. I remember. You tried to warn me. That look you'd give when I'd been there too long. But I wasn't ready to see it. The meeting began. Stories circled the room, relapses and recoveries, day counts and disasters averted. When it came to Mrs. Chun, she passed. First time, she said, just listening. But she stayed. Through the whole meeting, through the coffee after, through Danny's gentle introduction to other women in the group, who'd walked similar paths that I cleaned up after, she approached me. That young man, the one from the news. He was at your table that night, wasn't he? The night before? Yes. I saw him. Saw how young he was, how desperate. Thought about saying something, but she shrugged. What would I say? Stop before you end up like me. Maybe that would have helped. Maybe not. We'll never know. I'm sorry. For him. For you having to carry that. We all carry something. She left with Patricia's phone number, a meeting schedule, and the particular exhaustion that comes from taking the first step. I watched her go, remembering all the times she'd left my table with empty pockets and false promises to herself. Danny helped me stack the last chairs. She'll be back, he said. The ones who are ready always come back. How do you know she's ready? Because she saw you here. The dealer who watched her lose everything. If she can face that, she can face the rest. We locked up the church and stood in the parking lot. 3 months ago, I'd sat here wondering how to tell Lauren Chun her boyfriend's story. Now I came here twice a week, part of the solution instead of the problem. Hardware store in the morning, Danny reminded me. Got a shipment of garden supplies coming in. I'll be there. I drove home past the riverside, its neon muted by fog. Somewhere inside, dealers were working the grave shift, taking money, following rules, watching the water rise around players who thought they could beat the math, but not me. Not anymore. At home, I found a message from Marlene. She called sometimes, checking in. Tonight's voicemail said Janet had quit, couldn't handle the emotional weight anymore. They were short-staffed, desperate. Would I consider coming back? Just temporarily? I deleted the message without returning it. That life was over. I was a hardware store clerk now, a meeting helper, a keeper of stories, a witness to both loss and recovery. I in my kitchen. I made tea and sat at the same table where Danny had once spread his racing forms, where I'd counted my tips after long nights of dealing, where I now kept meeting schedules and recovery literature. My phone buzzed. Text from Lauren Chun. 1-year memorial service next month. You'll come. I'll be there. I typed back, because that's what we do. We show up. We remember. We honor the ones who didn't make it by helping the ones who still can. Tomorrow I'd sell someone a hammer, help them build something real. I'd make coffee for people choosing recovery over ruin. I'd carry Ryan Morrison and Mrs. Chun and all the others, but I'd carry them forward, not down. My hands were steady as I washed my cup and prepared for bed. Dealer's hands still, but clean now. No longer shuffling cards or collecting chips or pushing losses across the felt. Just hands. Human hands. Learning to help instead of harm, one small gesture at a time. Outside, a siren wailed. Ambulance or police, heading somewhere urgent. Maybe to the casino, maybe to the river, maybe to save someone who could still be saved. I said a prayer to no one in particular for whoever was in trouble tonight. Then I turned off the lights and tried to sleep, knowing I'd done what I could. Knowing it would never be enough. Knowing I'd keep trying anyway. In the morning, there would be hammers to sell and meetings to prepare. Lives to rebuild, including my own. The slow work of redemption, one day at a time. The house always wins, but we don't have to play. That's what I'd learned. What Ryan never got the chance to learn. What I now spent my days trying to teach, in my own small way. Deal me out. I'm done. Those were my last words as a dealer, walking away from the table 3 months ago. Now they were my first words each morning, a promise to myself and to the memory of everyone who'd lost more than money at my table. Deal me out. Start again. Build something better. Point one nail, one meeting, one saved life at a time.